It is a Football Friday right here on sportsbookreview.com. This is your NFL football show. I'm Donnie Seymour with Kyle Purviance. And look, we are going to get you ready for opening kickoff in Kansas City between the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. But we got to do a lot of homework and set this season up. You saw us previous on Wednesday going over the NFC East. Today, we are going to take on the NFC North. Kyle, welcome in, my friend. Talk some football.
Talking football, and I'm excited, and I like this division. I mean, they're not a lot of my favorite teams. My mom is a huge Vikings fan, so she's loving tuning into this. She has been for a long time, since the Fran Tarkenton days, of course. And last year we had a lot of fun when they played my Niners there in the divisional round of the playoffs, so that's a lot of fun there. But this is a tight division. I think this is an interesting division and some interesting off-season stuff going on with a lot of these teams, so I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And I get the easiest seat in the house. Donnie just leads us through, the best voice in sports, and I just get to sit here and talk a little bit. So I love that.
No, it is what it is, because you see the little font here on the screen. If you're watching through YouTube, it's blue. I'm wearing a nice shade of blue. Kyle's got on a nice shade of blue. We're talking about the NFC North. Maybe a team in that bluish purple might win the division. So, hey, we came correct here, and we're going to match it all up. But if you guys haven't done so yet, if you're just new to the show, if you're new to the channels by any chance, hit that subscribe button. I always joke around and say, if you're on YouTube watching, if that button is red down there, it should be red. It should be grayed out, which means you subscribe to the channels. If you haven't done so yet, please click on that. Also, click on the notification button. Every time Kyle and I go live here and talk a little bit of NFL football, you'll get it delivered to your inbox. You can come into the chat box and say hello, Sincere Miller and Annette Williams in the chat box already. And pretty soon, we're going to be fired up. When we really say it's Football Friday, that means we're gearing up for a full Sunday slate of activities. But today, it's nice little summer. It's nice little relaxation. So get your Monster, get whatever you're filling your cup with these days, and let's talk a little bit about the NFC North and go over. It's a 4-team race. Obviously, why? Because it's only 4 teams in each division here. And that's the Minnesota Vikings that are going to be the favorites here, listed at least odds-wise at plus 165. Those Green Bay Packers at 175. The Chicago Bears at 350. I got to tell you, Detroit Lions pulling up the rear, but at 600. This division is very competitive from top to bottom. When we see divisions like we just did with the NFC East, you have that 2-team race up top, Kyle, and then you have like the Redskins. Oh, can I throw, $100 down to win $1,300 back? That's not the case in this division. The Lions will be competitive, but I think overall this division, they're going to beat each other up here.
Yeah, they are. And when you look at each team, they all kind of have a tough stretch to start the season. It's really interesting. And you've got the Packers and the Vikings playing each other twice in the first month and a half of the season. So I think that's going to be really interesting. A lot of big moves by these teams, and it is interesting to look at the Lions. They're one of the shorter odds for the longer odds in the division. A lot of stuff going on there. Matthew Stafford, we expect to come back better and stronger. I mean, is there a tougher guy in the league than Matthew Stafford? I don't know, mentally and physically. I remember watching the guy throw a 2-point conversion with his left hand because his right shoulder was separated, and he threw it with his left hand. So a lot of interesting stuff in this division, and I would be remiss if I didn't give a quick shout out to the Freddie back there and all the people at SBR making us look good, making sure my receding hairline still looks good. I appreciate all of that. So big shout out to you guys, and thank you all for commenting. If you're coming over from the channel, don't forget $50 PayPal giveaway we're doing just for participating in the live show. So, I mean, come on.
Now, look, as long as I'm eligible for the $50, we will let that go and slide. And I will have my burners out in full effect, leaving 15 to 20 comments out here in this chat box after the show. So I'm going to take this down. But I think we're set up for a pretty good season, specifically in this division. And it's a fun division to break down. It's not one of those where you just throw out the bottom team and there's a clear runaway top, because I'll keep getting after it. I've been waiting on the Detroit Lions. It's almost the Detroit Lions are my Cleveland Browns, where everybody says, you know what, Kyle? Cleveland Browns, this is the year that we go on. This is the year that we win it, and we take the division, and then they end up with 5 wins, 4 wins, and fire a head coach. The Detroit Lions, if they can play for their head coach, you have the quarterback coming back, who, again, tough as nails, he'll be there. He's got an elite set of wide receivers. He's got a really good defense to deal with now. We're not going to break down the Lions now, but I can see where we say, like, this is the bottom end of the division, but is it really the bottom of the division,
I think it's close. I really do. And especially when you look, the favorite in the division right now is Minnesota, slightly over Green Bay. I mean, you look at those first 4 games. They play Green Bay, Indianapolis, who by all accounts should be better with Phillip Rivers there. We'll have to see. There's no quarterback in the league more equipped to play with no fans in the stadium than Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
Trust me, it was a road game every time he played at home. So he'll probably welcome that if that's the case in Indianapolis. Then they got the Titans, the Texans, the Seahawks, the Falcons, and then the Packers again. So that is a gauntlet on paper right now to start for Minnesota. And then when you look at the team, I guess we'll just jump right into it. Their biggest free agent acquisition this year was picking up Michael Pierce to replace Linval Joseph on the front seven there on the defensive line. And he ended up being their only opt-out for COVID. So they're going to be thin on the defensive line. Now they've got terrific linebackers, terrific safeties. They also lost all three of their starting cornerbacks last year. And if you're a Vikings fan, you know Xavier Rhodes was not the same player. Trey Waynes seemed like he sort of topped out. And shout out to Sincere Miller. I appreciate the support, brother. And then, of course, Mackenzie Alexander. So they rebuilt through the draft. They drafted 15 players, which is the most ever in NFL history for a team in the draft, 15 players. So it's going to be a young team. How much continuity will they have without a preseason, with sort of a different type of offseason? It's a little bit interesting. Tons of talent on the offensive end. I mean, obviously they lost Stephon Diggs, and they intend to replace him with Justin Jefferson, their first-round pick out of LSU. But when you read the camp reports right now, Jefferson's sort of having a tough time with the learning curve. It looks like Olabisi Johnson has jumped him on the depth chart right now. And when you think about, okay, well, he's still the number 3 receiver. The Vikings played 3 receiver sets less than any other team in the league last year. Only 25% of the time did the Vikings line up 3 wide receivers. So they're going to be relying on Dalvin Cook and Madison. They're going to be relying on Irv Smith Jr. He's going to play a lot more, I think, in the slot for that team. You're going to see those 2 tight end sets, which I believe they played that 34% of the time last year, second most in the NFL. They played 2 running backs this 20 or 31% of the time, which was also second in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see how they replace that deep ball threat of Stephon Diggs.
No, it will be interesting, because when you take a look at revolving doors, as long as you have your head coach in there, and like that regime's been around a while, Kirk Cousins, it always going to factor in how well can Kirk play in the big moment. You saw him make the playoffs last year and got bounced by the 49ers. But then again, the Green Bay Packers in the same division also got trounced by the 49ers on the way to the Niners, making the Super Bowl and winning the NFC. But when I take a look at the Minnesota Vikings overall, a lot of draft picks coming in, but there's a lot of big names that exited the building. If we just go over a couple, like Mackenzie Alexander, Stephon Diggs, Linval Joseph. Also, you slide it down, Everson Griffin, who just signed with the Dallas Cowboys as a defensive end. Xavier Rhodes, you're right. Big name, had some unbelievable years with the Minnesota Vikings, but it was clear that,
right,
look, in the NFL, sometimes it's a year-to-year sport. You could be on top one time, and you could be on the bottom the next year. And Xavier Rhodes certainly was out with the quickness. Sendejo, Laquan Treadwell, Trey Wayans. There's a lot of change. So you're going to realize, well, Alan Thielen's a very good wide receiver, and I think they were surprised that they actually got Justin Jefferson where they got him, figuring the Eagles might have snapped him up just before, but they go with Rager. So the talent is there on the team across the board. You have a good set of linebackers, obviously one of the more elite safety tandems in the NFL. They should be there at the end. But when I look at the division again, I want to be taking a long shot. And we just seemed like the NFC East the other day, the Dallas Cowboys minus 105, just about that even money. I mean, you still get 165, but is this one of those divisions where you say, you know what, this is a hard and fast team I want to bet? Because when I look down the list here, I'd rather have Matthew Stafford than Kirk Cousins. We'll say what you want. If Mitchell Trubisky starts for the Bears, they're just going the wrong way anyway. But, I mean, Nick Foles, he's a decent quarterback there. You take a look at all-world Aaron Rodgers. So when you look at, Cousins, arguably to me, third best quarterback in the division, but you have the best odds in the division to win it for the Vikings.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think some of that, too, is the great coaching. Obviously, Mike Zimmer's a fantastic coach. Gary Kubiak, you know what you're going to get from Gary Kubiak. He's going to run that zone run game. The Vikings ran the ball, I believe, second or third most in the league last year in terms of rushing attempts. They're going to rely on Dalvin Cook. And the good thing for that team is, Dalvin Cook did have some injury concerns the first couple of years before last year. Alexander Madison looks like the real deal, backing him up. So I think the talent is there. The coaching is there. You like these teams that still have that coaching staff together from the year before, especially in a year where they just haven't had a chance to work out together as much as they normally would. So I think you're right. I like the idea of throwing a little, I'm not big on picking favorites. I'm trying to find the value. And I think you're right about Detroit. We're going to get to them. So Minnesota certainly has the talent. A lot of unknowns here, a lot of big names, like you said, left. And I really worry about that defensive line. Are they going to be able to hold up enough blocks to let those linebackers free up and stop the run? They were, middle of the pack, 13th in the league last year defending the run. If they go backwards and regress backwards, does that put more of an onus on Kirk Cousins? And can he deliver, especially, losing one of his main weapons in Stephon Diggs? Adam Thielen, as we know, also has some injury concerns. He's had hamstring and knee issues over and over again. So then if you lose Adam Thielen, then you're going to be relying on, Olabisi Johnson, the rookie Justin Jefferson, and your tight ends, Rudolph and Irv Smith. So it's something for me, I'll pass on the Vikings and I'll take the longer odds deeper down the division.
Yeah, if we take a look at the Green Bay Packers, switch it over, plus 175, so technically the second best odds in the division. There's a lot of things that come up here because we're looking at a new coach that takes the regime over last year. They win 13 games, but really an unheralded 13 games. I mean, we can all agree that the Green Bay Packers, a very much overhyped team last year, got a playoff win in their first round, but then went on the road and got smacked by the 49ers, which, I mean, I think we agreed, or most people agreed, that probably was going to be the case once the NFC title game rolled around. But now you still have one of the elite quarterbacks of all time under the helm. You have a young head coach, and Matt LaFleur is going to take his second year under the helm there. Also, you have some good running backs, also wide receivers. They spent a lot of draft capital over the year on defense to try to bulk that up. But when I look at some things that sort of go in their favor, as long as you can keep Aaron Rodgers up healthy, that's certainly a boon to your football team.
Right.
If we look in the first 4 games of the schedule and taking into this pandemic COVID-19, you're usually looking at 2 of these first 4 games at Minnesota, one of the more raucous atmospheres out there for a dome, and then game 3 at New Orleans, one of the single toughest places to play in the NFL. Again, another dome with ear-splitting crowd noise. But if we're going to take the crowd out in Minnesota and out in New Orleans, that's your 2 road games here. That really helps the Green Bay Packers out. If you're just looking on its head, like we talked about, when you're going with just quarterbacks, like if you were betting Major League Baseball, hey, I like that pitcher, he's an ace. This is the best guy in the division here. You're getting 175, and those first 4 games were maybe backloaded on the schedule, Kyle. You can have a more full house, maybe 25%, 35%, right. 50%, or who knows? We're at maybe 100% by December. I think the schedule might fall to their advantage in this spot. Green Bay Packers certainly worth a look here in the NFC North.
Absolutely. And again, they clearly have the best quarterback in the division, and this is a quarterback-driven league. There's no doubt about that. The problem with the Green Bay Packers, and you talked about it last year, they were probably the worst 13-3 team we've seen since Steve Bono and the Chiefs went 13-3 back in you remember those teams, and we already knew what was going to happen.
Yep.
Then, and they'd already gotten smacked by the 49ers earlier. The problem, it was kind of a bad matchup. Their secondary is elite. Jair Alexander is evolving into one of the better young corners in the league, but they just struggle so much stopping the run. I think they were 23rd, 24th in the league last year stopping the run, and that's the strength of the 49ers offense. So it was going to be an uphill battle for them anyways. I do think it's interesting that the NFL is talking about pumping in the crowd noise.
Yes.
And I was reading some of the Packers camp reports, how they are doing that in their practices. They're pumping in noise and music to sort of get ready for that. How much that would affect a veteran quarterback like Aaron Rodgers? Probably not much. But the problem with them, and this has been the case, it's kind of ironic because you remember the first ever real big free agent signing was Reggie White leaving your Eagles to go over to the Green Bay Packers back in 1993. Yep. The Packers are not a team that attack free agency aggressively. If you look, they really did have one really good addition, which I think is really going to help that defense, and that's Christian Kirksey out of Cleveland. And by the reports, he's already taken over a leadership role. But the big problem for the Packers last year on offense was their only weapon they had was Devontae Adams. So what do? They draft a quarterback in the first round, a running back in the second round, a tight end in the third round. They did nothing to help Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Based purely on Aaron Rodgers' talent alone, I will take the added value Packers over the Vikings right now as we sit here. Now, again, a lot of things can happen, injuries, etc. Probably less likely injuries are going to happen without the preseason games, but we've already seen some camp injuries. Your Philadelphia Eagles, of course. Miles Sanders is week to week. So there's some things to look at there, but they just didn't add anything that gets me excited. I mean, I have it on the list. The big wide receiver addition for this team was Malik Turner, a special teamer from Seattle. So Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and they're going to have to step up. And of course, we will get these reports through Green Bay Packers camp. Valdez-Scantling looks terrific, blah, blah, blah. And then we've all seen him on the field. He doesn't do a damn thing. Alan Lazard, the Lizard Man's going to have to be their number 2 wide receiver. How afraid are any defenses going to be of that? So you're going to see a lot of coverage rolled over to Davante Adams. You're going to see a lot of usage again for Davante Adams. And if Davante Adams goes down or is limited in any way, it's going to be a struggle offensively. You're going to have to see the young man, Philip Irvin, who was sort of kind of like their Swiss Army knife on offense last year. They did draft A.J. Dillon. Of course, they still have my mind's going blank because I'm old, Jones, the running back there. So, there are some weapons there, but I wish they would have done a little bit more in the offseason to help out Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, they never do. They never do. And it's a shame because, there'll be a 30 for 30 on ESPN coming up in a couple of years saying, how did you have 15 years of Aaron Rodgers? You won 1 Super Bowl. You only got to 1 Super Bowl. Imagine if you're just pushing your chips in constantly for that window we always talk about, just like the Chiefs are going to go through with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and the young group that they have. They're saying, you know what? We're paying everybody. We're going all in. We're adding pieces. Let's go out and win another one. The Packers just say, well, we have the quarterback. We'll be competitive every year. We'll see if he can put everything on his back. And it doesn't always work out that way. Even adding a wide receiver, Devin Funchess, in the offseason, he opts out due to COVID. So you don't even get any of those weapons added back, but you just say, hey, Aaron Rodgers is good enough. Look at last year. We won 13 games. We really don't have to add that much overall to it. And again, when you talk about the Packers, a little bit different than other organizations, they're owned basically by a, family city, municipal corporation where there's not any of those megawatt owners that say, dude, I got 300 million cash laying in the bank. Who are we going out to get? They're looking at their shareholders. They're saying, we can't do this. We don't. You're right. They never go out and make that big splash, as opposed to back in 1993 when we had rallies for Reggie at Philadelphia City Hall. Didn't matter because we had Norman Braben, the cheapest owner of all time in all sports, that let that nasty game. Look, I could just go right on a tangent for my Eagles off of any football team right now. So just the way it is. But the Green Bay Packers certainly will be there at the end. But this division, again, stacked up on top of each other. Best quarterback in the division is Green Bay. Maybe they get a break early on. But you bring up a really good point on the crowd noise, because who's going to use that to their advantage? And damn well, if we have a stadium that's 65,000 seats with nobody in it, they can turn up that volume pretty loud to make it seem like there's 65,000 people yelling. So I always joke like, hey, the Jacksonville Jaguars that have no fans, probably more fans from the opposite stadium, they're like, oh my God, there's nobody here. We actually have a home field advantage because of how loud we could turn up our speakers. It'll be really interesting to watch. Let's keep it moving here and get down to those Chicago Bears. We know they have an elite defense, right? We know they have Tariq Cohen, Swiss Army knife in the backfield. We know they have a running game now with Montgomery. You also brought in a quarterback, Nick Foles, and I don't care what anything comes out of Chicago. I don't want to hear any of the head football coach talking about. I don't want to hear the GM talking about anything. You acquired Nick Foles, put him in, because when you watch Mitchell Trubisky, it's hard for him just to make a 5-yard pass and make it work. Hand the football to Nick Foles. He'll play pitch and catch with the wide receivers. You'll lean on that defense, and you'll be a good football team. If we want to say, well, hey, I'm the GM, Ryan Pace. I drafted Mitchell Trubisky. I have to make this work. Well, you're already going to be done. You at least got out of your rocking chair in the offseason, got a competent quarterback who can come in and, again, just play pitch and catch. Not play pitch and catch to the other team, but to your team right there. Complete a screen pass. The tight end's open over the middle for 7 yards. Hit them there. Don't airmail it to the back end safeties. I think the Chicago Bears have a pretty good football team, but I'm really not high on them this year. Only 350 in the division here, Kyle. I think they'll be competitive, but they're not getting my money to win this division.
Yeah, and mine neither. And it's interesting that you talk about the Foles and Trubisky thing. And, I'm looking at that Lombardi trophy behind you and thinking about Nick Foles and outplaying Tom Brady in a Super Bowl, which I think is an indictment. Sorry, Patriots fan, but that's an indictment on Tom. You lose to Nick Foles in the Super Bowl, that's an indictment on your legacy, in my opinion. But I was just kind of going through and just reading some of the camp reports and see what's going on, and they're actively saying this is an open quarterback competition. And apparently yesterday was a great day for Mitchell Trubisky until the very end, where he threw a horrible interception. And I couldn't help but think, when you look at Mitchell Trubisky with a helmet on, doesn't he look just like Tony Romo? It's very bizarre.
Yeah, he does. He has that look. Yep.
Yeah, he looks just like Tony Romo. And there's sort of some of that stuff. I mean, one of the most famous plays for Tony Romo was fumbling the snap on the extra point in the playoff game.
Seattle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I don't know why I understand they invested a lot of money in Mitchell Trubisky, but you're right. If you're going to bring Nick Foles over, who is not a turnover machine, is a veteran, understands how to play the position, and you've got very, very good wide receivers on that team. Allen Robinson is an absolute stud on the outside. Anthony Miller really progressed last year for the team. They brought in Jimmy Graham to help out, even a little Demetrius Harris from Kansas City. But this is another team that didn't do a whole lot. Robert Quinn, I mean, longtime veteran. He's going to play on the outside. I guess they like him in camp right now. Again, the coaches are never going to say on those camp reports, well, this guy looked like crap today. It doesn't happen very often. It's all about building it up, building it up, building it up. I do like the addition of Jermaine Ifedi. I think that gives them some depth on the offensive line. They're going to need that, especially if they go. Mitchell Trubisky, his one asset that I don't think the team allowed him to use enough, and certainly he didn't use enough until later in the year, was he's got good legs and he's really good on the run. They need to get him out of the pocket. That's not necessarily the case for Nick Foles, but I just can't see anything here. The loss of Leonard Floyd, I think, is a huge loss for this team. Clinton Dix. So you might even see this defense be a little less elite than it was last year. Artie Burns, who they brought over in free agency, he just got hurt. He's out for the year. Jalen Johnson, someone just brought him up in the comment section, and I think that he could be a nice addition. They did lose Prince and Makamura. So the Bears, we
also
know
lost Eddie Goldman to COVID too. So I mean, one of the top defensive linemen. Yeah,
that's right. Eddie Goldman opted out. Jordan Lucas opted out. They did bring in Deion Bush. So that's a great point. Eddie Goldman's a huge loss.
Yep.
I mean, we know what we're going to get from the Bears. A mediocre run game, even though the young running back, David Montgomery, you hope he steps up a little bit. But you see when they call Tariq Cohen, he gets far too many snaps. So it never makes much sense to me. You're going to get sort of a boring team. You're going to get some exciting plays out of Allen Robinson. It's going to be a good defense. I will say the schedule favors them more than, the Vikings and the Packers we talked about. They get the Lions week 1, which, should be interesting, but you'd rather play the Lions than the Packers week 1, like the Vikings and Packers are doing. They get the Giants week 2, who by all accounts are not going to be very good. The Falcons, now the Falcons could be we're going to talk about them next on Monday, that NFC South, and that's going to be a tough division. The Falcons should bounce back, but again, not an elite defense, so you might be able to get rolling there. Then the Colts, then the Bucks. So those first couple of games, I think if for some reason you want to talk yourself into putting money on Chicago, you're hoping they go 2-0 early, and you're hoping they take advantage of that and hoping the rest of the division. I just personally don't see it. I mean, after that, it's you get the Panthers, then it's the Rams, the Saints, the Titans, the Vikings, the Packers. I don't see it. I would feel better about it if they name Nick Foles the starter right now, I guess, is where I'm at with Chicago.
Yeah, it looks interesting because, I mean, we're talking about 2018, 12 wins, making it to the playoffs. That was the double doink where the Philadelphia Eagles went in and ended up beating the Chicago Bears. 2019 with 8 wins. It still seems surprising that they got 8 wins last year. If we look at their team total this year, it's 8 at plus 105, which means you need 9 wins to cash that ticket. Normally, I would say the Bears would be a playoff team. But again, it's not like if you played in the NFC East where you have the Giants and the Redskins where you could pick up some easy winners. There's no easy winners in this division. And unless Nick Foles comes in and plays elite level football to keep up, I don't know if they can get the 9 wins. I don't think Mitchell Trubisky can get them to 9 wins. I even remember last year Mitchell Trubisky got hurt in a game where I believe he was diving for a fumble during the sidelines or got hit, separated his shoulder, was out. And I was making jokes saying, I bet you if you bet the Chicago Bears today, you were jumping for joy that Mitchell Trubisky actually got knocked out of the game. How crazy is that? Because that's how poorly he played. You saw it from opening night last year where they couldn't get anything going against the Green Bay Packers. Say, man, this quarterback stinks. And it's like, oh, maybe it was just, opening night. He had a decent year the year before as a young kid. Let's see if he gets it going. He was terrible to me the entire year, and I think that's going to continue because he's going to go up against some pretty good competition. Last team in the division, which I think has the most value, Kyle, got to say, plus 600 on the Detroit Lions with a team total of 6.5. You have the veteran all-pro caliber quarterback. You have some added weapons in the backfield. I like the wide receiving core, Danny Amendola in the slot. You got Galladay on the outside, Marvin Jones. They have the really, really solid offense that they can work off of and added a lot of pieces to the defense. When we take a look at some of the guys, coming in here, forget about losing Darius Slay, which is a huge loss. But hey, how do you compound that? Take a top 5 pick with Jeff Okudah and try to plug him in and say, look, this is going to be our young rising corner that we're going to be able to work off of. But you see the guys that actually came in, Reggie Ragland coming, he'll be a nice backup addition. Sure. Jamie Collins out of New England. They'll continue to add those type of guys. They have all they need on defense. Matt Patricia, head football coach, just has to settle in and make it all work. I got to say, I'm leaning towards the over 6.5 in this. And if I'm going to take a flyer where you say, hey, you know what? I think the Packers win the division. Why not put a little bit on Detroit, 6-1 odds to win it? If they're there and they're healthy in this, shortened season, I should say shortened season. I hope it's not a shortened season, but in this season with COVID and maybe somebody tests or, maybe they get a healthy run, plus 6-1 is not a bad look here.
Right. And you made a great point when you were talking about Mitchell Trubisky and how they had a better chance to win last year when he got hurt. That's because their backup quarterback was a very good backup quarterback in Chase Daniel.
Yeah.
Well, the Lions went ahead and signed Chase Daniel this year. If you remember last year when Matthew Stafford got hurt, they were trotting out Jeff Driscoll. And then on Thanksgiving Day, it was David Blah. Yeah. And he actually went out and played pretty well, if you remember the first half of that game.
Well. Yep, sure.
But they've certainly shored that up. And in a year of uncertainty, if a COVID test happens, you'd sure like to have another quarterback who can come in and run the offense. And then you talked about the loss of Darius Slay, which is a big loss. But when you look at the secondary last year, they were the worst passing defense in the league last year.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close, actually. I mean, you just attacked them and attacked them and attacked them. Now they get rid of Slay, who goes to Detroit or Philly, which I think is a huge upgrade for Philly, who also had secondary problems last year. You talked about Jeff Okudah they drafted. They also brought in Desmond Trufant from Atlanta, who's a longtime veteran standout corner. They brought in Danny Shelton and Nick Williams to shore up that defensive line. Upgrade on the offensive tackle. I will destroy this guy's name, but Halapatulavadi Vatai.
There you go. By the way, in Philadelphia, it was just Big V. We kept it simple. Man.
Big V. Yeah. Big V. Daryl Roberts to play in the slot. So I do think there was a lot of additions. I like what they did in the draft. It really seemed they're loaded in the running back. At running back, you have Kerryon Johnson. They drafted DeAndre Swift. They lost J.D. McKissick, of course, but they still have, when you read the camp reports, Bo Scarborough still looks great. This young guy, Jonathan Williams, they brought in apparently looks great. So a lot of depth at those positions. You talked about Galladay, who I think is one of the top 5 or 6 upcoming young wide receivers. He can really take over a game. TJ Hawkinson, who started out great last year. Everyone was saying, oh, the new Travis Kelce is going to be TJ Hawkinson. Then he kind of fell off a little bit. Early camp reports look like he's bulked up a little bit. He understands the offense more. He and Matthew Stafford have a nice rapport. I know it's not great money for us to agree too much, but I think I'm right there with you with this Detroit Lions pick. It's hard. When's the last time the Lions won a playoff game? Was it Barry Sanders in 91 when they lost to Washington in the championship game? The Mark Rippon, Ricky Sanders, Gary Clark, Washington teams back then. But and there's been a whole bunch of mistakes, but I think Detroit, I like the coaching staff. I like Darrell Bevell calling the plays. I like Matt Patricia. And one interesting thing I noted that they finished 3-12-1 last year, but they were 6-10 against the spread. They were competitive in games that people didn't expect them to be competitive in without Matthew Stafford and David Blah playing quarterback. So I like the Lions this year.
Yeah, we'll see them again. I'm sure they get blown out, whoever they play on Thanksgiving Day, which seems like an annual tradition each and every year. You watch the Detroit game, then us being myself being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, we root against the Dallas Cowboys right around dinner time. So we'll see if that holds up. But you're right. 3 wins last year, 6 wins the previous year before that, back-to-back 9-win years. The team, you only go as far as your quarterback typically in the NFL.
Right.
And if Matthew Stafford can stay upright, he takes a lot of hits, but in crunch time, there's nobody better that you would want in that fourth quarter to bring a comeback or have your team in it. They have enough weapons that should be able to get over the hump. But again, it's one of those things that we'll continue to talk about, that teams you wait on and say, this team should be better. That's not a 3-win team. You can't match Patricia's the head coach. He's going to have a lot to answer for if they end up with another 5-win season. It's a low team total that we're looking at 6.5. And again, the worst teams in the league win 3 games. So it's almost like when you get you just get 300 points to sign for an SAT just for your name. You get 3 wins just about every year in the NFL just for showing up on Sunday. So we'll see if that can actually turn it over. But an interesting division from top to bottom. If we take a look and wrap this up, team total on the Minnesota Vikings is at 8.5. That's minus 170, heavily juiced. When we take a look at the Green Bay Packers, they're at 9 plus 120. So roughly both of those teams have the same team totals as if we're looking. Also, the Chicago Bears sitting at over 8 plus 105. And then the Detroit Lions at 6.5 minus 150. I think the Lions get their team total of 7. I would lean under on the Bears at 8. And I got to tell you, does 9 wins, Kyle, win this division?
I think it could
beat each other up, man.
I really think it could. And just those early season schedule games, it's going to be interesting what happens later on in the year. I think 9 games very well could win the division. It wouldn't shock me if the Packers pull out the close games just because of the quarterback play. We talked about the Thanksgiving game. It's actually going to be I wanted to bring up the Lions' schedule for that Thanksgiving game. It's against the Texans, a team. We'll get to that.
Oh, so they'll take a loss. Yeah, so they'll lose.
They might. The Texans. There's probably only two. I think the two teams who had the worst offseason were the Packers and the Texans. Yeah. And that's pretty much every year because I don't understand what the hell's going on in Houston, but we'll get to that. I just don't get that team. So I think 10 wins will definitely win the division. 9 could. I kind of like the added value going the over 9 wins for Green Bay. I think you can kind of parlay that in a division win and take the team over total. I right now, as I sit, I like that. And if I'm taking a long shot in the division, of course, I'm taking Detroit. And I think it's one of the teams, I certainly think Detroit has a better chance at winning the NFC North than Carolina does of winning the NFC South. So just kind of looking, at these two divisions in the NFC, I don't mind throwing some money on Detroit.
Yeah, I'm looking at Green Bay plus 175, a little bit of that piece, and then also Detroit at plus 600. One quick question before we get out of here, Sincere Miller in the chat box. Question, which is interesting here because he's talking about the NFL trying to disclose a player if they fail a COVID test at the last minute or 30 minutes before kickoff. It's going to be really interesting because, we're on sportsbookreview.com. We're gamblers. We bet these games. And it's one of those years where you really have to be careful because this came up time and time again already. And we're also you're getting ready for college basketball season as well as the college football season. We used to, jump lines early in the week. That's fantastic. It works great in the past. Hey, this line opened up at 3.5. I got it. Now it's at 5.5. I saved 2 points and I got it on Monday. I'm feeling good about my play, but it doesn't mean anything if you get that 3.5 and it's 5.5 on Friday and your starting quarterback tests positive on Saturday morning. And now all of a sudden you lost 6 points of value because you bet it. Yeah, you beat the line. But at this point in time, I got to tell you, Kyle, I'm going to wait maybe later in the week to see what's up because these guys are being tested every day. The same thing you see in Major League Baseball. It just comes out of nowhere. Hey, everybody's doing good here. And next thing you know, the Mets series is down against the Yankees because one person tests positive. And also he brings up an even better point is when the person tests positive, are we going to have to dig in and be like, hey, 2 guys on the Packers tested positive? Well, if it's a backup linebacker and a young rookie cornerback who's 5th on the depth chart, who cares? But if it turns out to be your starting offensive tackle and Aaron Rodgers, is that information coming out?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I hope it does. The NFL of all the major sports are usually the best at getting this stuff.
You're right.
They really do. So I would be surprised if we didn't, but you're right about waiting. When we first started thinking about football, I was like, hey, I'm going to take all these juiced lines for these home teams because if we're going to play without fans, who gives a damn about home field advantage? And, typically when they make lines and you're betting lines, you add about 3 points for being at home. So if I could find some value taking a road team who would not be experiencing the same sort of, atmosphere on the road as they normally would, I was going to take some of that juice. But you're right. If we get a notification Saturday night saying, hey, Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady.
It's Sunday morning. Hey, woke up this morning.
It's Sunday morning time for me all year this year. Yeah.
No, it'll be interesting. And again, we're going to have some fun all the way through Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Me and Kyle are going to be breaking down a different division. We have it paced out perfectly to get us right to opening week. So all of a sudden, when the lights turn on and the Houston Texans play the Kansas City Chiefs, we'll have every team out there. And we're also going to have in that last week some nice shows here just to set it up, put a bow on it, and look forward to the regular season. But also maybe the single best show that I've ever been a part of, and this will be my 4th year, is the Sunday pregame show where we kick off right up to kickoff. It's an hour show. It's a great chat box. It's a lot of good times, information, bets, who's in, who's out, getting you caught up. We're going to do it all right here at sportsbookreview.com, setting you up properly for football season. Monday again, Kyle and I will be back at it right at 4 p.m. Eastern time, setting it up, getting you ready for football because, yes, we might not see it, Kyle, on TV, brother. But this football season is coming up quick. It's August 21st, September 10th. The Thursday night is the opening kickoff between the Kansas City Chiefs, the world champion Chiefs, with maybe 20% capacity in Arrowhead. So the fans possibly will be there. A lot still to decipher and go over, but it's fun to talk about it, get it out in the air. We hope you guys enjoyed the show here for Friday. Enjoy your weekends. As I say, Kyle and I will be back on Monday. Maybe a special guest appearance by somebody else as well to fill in these shows throughout the summer. But we did it. We're home. The NFC North is in the book, and we'll keep moving on. This is your NFL football show. I'm Donnie Seymour. He's Kyle Purviance, and we'll be here all season long right here on sportsbookreview.com.